From 2011 to 2018, Matt Carpenter was a three-time All-Star and MVP candidate, hitting the middle of the order for the St. Louis Cardinals. After a steady decline over the next 3 years, it appeared that his career in the bigs was coming to a close. He knew he needed to make a change, and this winter dedicated his entire offseason to reinventing himself. And to say the results have been spectacular would be a major understatement. I'm Ryan Gregware with Michael Calamari, and this is the comeback of Matt Carpenter, from forgotten All-Star to New York Yankee.
It's hard to put into words just how much Matt Carpenter struggled in the twilight years of his time in St. Louis. After hitting 36 home runs in 2018, Carpenter steadily declined to the point where he was almost unplayable. His average and run production numbers dropped in each of the next 3 years and culminated with a miserable 2021 season. In 130 games, Carpenter hit .169 with 3 home runs and just a .581 OPS. The Cardinals declined their $18 million club option, making him a free agent for the first time in his career.
The writing was on the wall for Carpenter. A 36-year-old coming off the 3 worst seasons of his career knew that if he wanted to stay in the big leagues, major changes were needed. And it started with a phone call to longtime rival Joey Votto. The two spent years going up against each other in the NL Central, but didn't talk very often. Votto, who notably revived his career in his late stages, was on vacation in Paris, but offered Carpenter his advice. Votto is known for being one of the most brutally honest players in the sport. Carpenter even said that if Votto told him he had peaked and he was done, he would have listened and retired. But that was not the case, as Votto told him he could get back to the player he was and described his process with golf instructors to get back to barreling up the baseball. "I hung up the phone and was fired up," Carpenter said, and fired up he was, as this was only the beginning of the journey for Carpenter to find his swing.
Carpenter had never taken a data-driven approach to his swing until last offseason. He spent a day in a lab at Marucci, a bat company who had partnered with a baseball performance lab. The lab measures a player's vertical, horizontal, and torque force when swinging. Then, the lab takes a 3D motion capture system to assess different areas of the body. What the data showed was that it wasn't a strength issue or an age issue for Carpenter. It was a swing getting out of sorts. He wasn't using his lower half properly to generate enough force and was struggling to keep his bat in the zone throughout the swing. Now that he had the analytical view, it was now time to fix what he had learned. That included help from Paul Goldschmidt's hitting coach in Arizona, Tim Laker, and Craig Waylenbrock, who most notably turned around the career of JD Martinez. With their help through a series of unorthodox drills, Carpenter regained efficiency in his lower half. These drills involve throwing baseballs and frisbees sidearm with his top hand to mimic his swing path. Carpenter, who also went to a friend and former teammate Matt Holliday, learned the last few pointers that were needed for the former All-Star to find himself once again. But even after all the work he had put in, Carpenter still needed to regain the confidence that he could perform again at the professional level.
We flash forward to March, where Carpenter signs a minor league deal with the Texas Rangers, the team closest in proximity to his home in Fort Worth. Carpenter told himself that if it wasn't called up after a month, he would call it quits, and despite his best effort to earn that opportunity, it wouldn't come with the Rangers. After hitting .275 with a .992 OPS, the call-up wasn't intimate, as Carpenter requested his release from the club. He was prepared to accept that his career was over. He invited his parents and kids to his last series in Sugar Lake so they had one more chance to watch him play the game of baseball. Once Carpenter was granted his release, the Braves and Red Sox reached out, but could only offer AAA roster spots. Carpenter told himself he wasn't going to put his family or himself through the minor league shuffle and decline those roles. The only team that did reach out with a big league offer was the one with the best record in baseball, the New York Yankees.
After injuries to Giancarlo Stanton and Josh Donaldson, the Yankees found themselves with a need to fill in their lineup. Matt Carpenter's ability to play everywhere on the diamond, along with his versatility as a lefty, grabbed the Yankees' attention.
There was a lot of conversation even going back to spring training. He was on our radar. You know, a lot of the guys in our front office and our analysts were paying close attention to him. So he was on our radar as early as spring training, and then probably the 2 weeks leading up to when we got him, there was still a lot of talk about him. We knew he had an out in his contract, and and then it kind of coincided with Donaldson and Stan going on the IL. I think we might have done it anyway, but I think that was like, okay, let's absolutely go do this. So there's been conversation around him for a couple months.
With the IL stints for both Stanton and Donaldson being quick ones, Carpenter then had to earn his spot to stay a Yankee. He even suggested he would personally put the team bags on the plane if it meant staying with the team. But what he did on the diamond was much more important than any help with the travel, homering in his second game against the Tampa Bay Rays. In fact, Carpenter's first 3 hits with the club were all homers, and he was the first Yankee to achieve this feat since Kyle Higashioka. It was clear from the get-go that the changes Carpenter made in the offseason would pay off. And from the Yankees and Aaron Boone's perspective, it looked like the team was getting the same player who was an all-star in St. Louis.
No, I think it resembles who he's been and who he was when he was a really good player in this league. So so there's nothing that I'm seeing like in whatever subtle adjustments that he made that he wanted to improve on the last couple of years. He looks like the Matt Carpenter I've watched as an all-star player with the Cardinals.
This alone would have made Carpenter's second act a remarkable story, but the true impact that he's had since then is in the same vein as Yankees legends. The true breakout game for Carpenter culminated in a June 12th win over the Chicago Cubs. The Yankees overpowered the Cubs 18-4, and the star of the game was Carpenter. He went 3 for 4 with 2 homers, a double, a walk, and 7 runs batted in. After going 8 days between starts, the historic start for Carpenter could not be ignored. He became the first Yankee in franchise history to hit 6 homers in his first 10 games with the team. Carpenter himself acknowledged his fortune to end up in this spot.
I feel good in the plate. I feel like I can have competitive bat every time I get in there. It kind of got away from me the last few years. Just didn't really have it. Was able to put in a lot of good work and have a lot of people help me kind of get it back. So it's pretty rewarding, and to be able to do it in New York City for the best team in baseball, and them have the faith in to sign me, it means a lot, and I'm enjoying it.
Somehow, some way, the historic pace of Carpenter would continue. It all culminated in the last series of the first half versus Boston. After 2 hits in Game 1, Carpenter exploded with his second 2-homer, 7 RBI game of the season in a 14-2 rout of the Red Sox. The list of Yankees with 2 7 RBI games in a season: Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, and Matt Carpenter. Carpenter received a curtain call during the game, which truly put into perspective how far he has come. And for all the physical adaptations that Carpenter has made, the mental aspect has been just as important for Carpenter.
How much of the work you think you put in to get to this place was physical or the mental side of things?
I think it's pretty even split. I mean, half of it was making sure I could mechanically do what I wanted to do, but then the other half was getting confidence again. I mean, this games revolves around confidence, and I'd struggled for a long time, and granted it was AAA, but just having success again was kind of what made me feel like I could do it at this level.
With an RBI double and 3 runs batted in the following game, Carpenter became just the second Yankee ever to have 10 RBIs in a 2-game span versus the Red Sox. It brought his first half to a close with numbers you wouldn't believe. In 79 at-bats, Carpenter is hitting .354 with 13 home runs, 34 RBIs, a 1380 OPS, and a .933 slugging percentage, the highest through a player's first 30 games of a season in MLB history. His teammates have a front row seat every night, and Garrett Cole talked about what it's been like watching Carpenter day in and day out.
It's great when it's on your team, I tell you that. I've been watching that for a long time in the first half of my career. And I've been on the wrong side of that quite a bit. So it's a great story all around. When you get to know the person, you feel even better about it.
As the Yankees head into the second half, a bat appears to be the top of their trade deadline wish list. But if Carpenter stays even remotely close to the production he's given the Yankees, it will be Brian Cashman's best move in a year filled with A-plus decisions. With WFUV Sports, I'm Ryan Gregware.
And I'm Michael Calamari.